Hi. I am here at Casa Lu in Tepotzlan, Mexico, and because I'm here at the residency with Leslie, I'm doing a different format than some of the other conversations, which are on Zoom.
We're actually like sharing a space.
Yeah.
I'm getting a pillow.
Leslie Moody Castro is a curator in Mexico City, and she's here at the residency for 2 weeks or so.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. How do I open this?
To point my face at it.
Okay.
Sorry.
Technical difficulties.
It's been a long time since we've been with people, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, how do we interact? So maybe you can talk a little bit about so maybe you can just say like what you do in Mexico City, and then talk about like what your living situation is like there, and like when the virus first hit, like where you were.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm an independent curator. I've lived and worked in Mexico City for 15 years, and I travel back and forth between the States and Mexico for work. I basically say I go where the job takes me, so I'm totally independent, so I don't rely on like a regular job at an institution. So I just kind of pick up and go whenever I'm invited to do projects, and the invitation.
Exciting.
Yeah, it's really exciting because I like never know. It's always really flexible, and like, you know, I might have a plan for the entire year of where I'm going that year, but it always changes, and things like are constantly shifting and adjusting, and so I'm always really flexible to that. So yeah, like I never really know what's gonna happen more than like 2 or 3 months out.
So this kind of new like lifestyle that we're all living is kind of common to you.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm not really used to planning anyway.
Yeah,
So
I plan as much as I can, but like, you know, a lot of things are usually out of my control anyway, so it's okay. And where was I when the virus hit? I was in Austin, Texas. I was finishing up a project, a big corporate project I was doing, a curatorial gig, when the virus first started. And I think I finished 6 of the 7 projects, and we still had 1 artist that needed to come in and finish her project, and so she was kind of waiting until the very last week, just of the nature of her work. And during that week was really when things started to get serious. I was also like planning an event for South by Southwest.
like serious in the States.
Yeah.
Finally. Okay.
Yeah. I'd also been planning an event with South by Southwest, and of course that got canceled pretty early on. And that's when it was like, shit, is this real, or is this like, is this just, you know, people kind of nervously freaking out? Remains to be seen. And then it was within like the week following that things had really started hitting the fan in the States.
Yeah. And you were still there, and so
Still there.
you kind of had to make the decision like, where am I going to be during this? Okay.
Yeah, so I finished out the project with the artist, Tammy Rubin's her name, and I pretty much decided that like whenever the project was done, I was gonna come back to Mexico and just shelter in place here. Yeah.
And what was that decision like? Is that, I mean, it's hard because like your home is in Mexico City, so I guess creature comforts, but yeah, was there like any thought of like wanting to be close to your family, or?
No.
This is being recorded.
Yeah, that's okay. So I'm very lucky. My parents are still in Austin, and we're very, very close, and they have a mother-in-law apartment in their backyard that I live there when I'm there. I'm the one that renovated it, and like we put it on Airbnb when I'm traveling, when I'm not in Austin, which is great.
That's great.
So it's really, really wonderful because I can be close to them, but I have my own space. My parents don't really take it seriously, and they continue to like go to church and continue to like gather, and it was really frustrating.
You were saying not just any church, but like a mega church. Yeah,
A
2,000 people. So it's like
a small town.
Yeah.
And so it was really concerning, and it just wasn't a healthy environment for me to be in, to like watch them not take it seriously and watch them continue to like not listen to the news, but listen to, you know, what the church bishop thought was important, which was gathering, which was like the one thing that we weren't supposed to be doing and are not supposed to be doing.
like #1 rule of the pandemic is like social distance.
Yeah. Like, don't hang out with people.
Wash your hands and be away. Yeah.
Like, don't go and like, you know, sit next to someone or sit next to 2,000 people.
Yeah.
And so I just decided that like I couldn't deal with it, and that happened, and then like, or that was happening, and then the U.S. like panic shopping was happening, and like hoarding was happening, and it was just getting really tense and really stressful. And so, just aside from like creature comforts, you know, to come home to my home, it was also like just sort of with the anxiety that was building in the States, it was just too much. And I'd been in Mexico before during like a crisis and a disaster. And
was it like the earthquake or?
A few earthquakes. I was also here immediately post.
Because you've been in Mexico for 15 years. Yeah, so I'm sure you've seen all kinds of things at that time.
And I was here like immediately post swine flu. Like I had been in grad school.
Sorry, technical difficulties.
I had been in grad school during swine flu time, but I came to visit Mexico like a week afterwards, and so and everything was just really calm, and that was contained really quickly.
And that was 2017.
There
was like an influenza in 2017 that you guys dealt with.
That was into the H1N1 swine flu was in 2006, I think.
Oh wow. Okay.
I think.
Okay.
And then the earthquake was in 2017. So yeah, it was just natural to come home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And kind of on that note, like, you know, when I first started hearing about it here, I was kind of watching to see how the government would react, and I was like surprised to see the president kind of holding up the amulets. Like that's like the famous image of him holding up these two like Catholic amulets and saying that they're going to protect him.
Yeah.
But then, you know, based on conversations we've had, you said like other parts of the government are actually taking swift action.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about like how you see the culture on the ground in the city versus like what the news is kind of reporting?
Yeah. So on the ground, I guess like when the States was slowly starting to shut down, Mexico was already starting to shut down. So even though the virus was projected to arrive in Mexico 2 weeks after the States, they were still 2 weeks in advance of preparation, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like the government was prepping the entire population for a shutdown and like moving in very slow waves because we have such a big population. Just all of our cities are massive.
Yeah.
And the population also has a history of not listening to the president.
Okay, so he's kind of like the showboat,
I mean,
mouthpiece, and it's not actually reflective of...
There's just so much corruption in the country in general, and has been for so long that like people know better than to like really pay attention to what the government is actually saying.
And you're not going to get in trouble for saying that.
No, it's everyone knows. I mean, a great example of this is an 1885 earthquake. The government denied that the earthquake actually happened and took zero action to help people prevent it, and did some of that in 2017 as well. And so the population just naturally comes together and organizes as a community. And so when the news was coming that the virus was coming, people just sort of, and of course this is a major generalization. Another thing is like with a massive population, there's also massive economic disparity, and so those that can take it seriously and can shelter in place started doing that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And then the government just like kept moving in waves. The Secretary of Health has been doing a great job of informing people. There have been like really, really, really good informative press conferences happening every day. And I've compared that to like watching the press conferences in the States, which are just like a frenetic shit show. With
the president, but then I feel like there are governors that are like kind of more like that, where on the state level they're taking the actions that our federal government should take. Yeah, and we were kind of comparing him, the health secretary, to Cuomo, who everyone's like falling in love with because he's so responsible.
And I guess like my government, I'm from Texas originally, and so we're dealing with like Abbott, who's also a shit show.
Oh, okay.
So it's like to see the difference in how the like big Secretary of Health is handling things here on the ground in Mexico has been really amazing. And to see like the realistic information that's been given, like they're literally like, people have died, people are gonna die, we have a big population, we need to do what we can. We don't want to take military action, we can force people to stay home, but we will. And so yeah, it was very much a relief to be here than to be in the States.
Yeah, well, and one thing like we've noticed, like our town that we're in has shut down a little bit, but there's not the same kind of like panic buying and like hoarding of toilet paper or hand sanitizer or anything really. It's like prices are going up a little on like beer, I think, because it's harder to get. Maybe that's the only panic buying that people are doing here.
And beer is harder to get because they shut down the government shut down breweries.
Ah, is that why? Okay, so that makes more sense.
That's why. But yeah, no, there's no like. I remember when I got back to Mexico, I was prepping to, quarantine for 2 weeks because I had just been on a plane, and I went to the grocery store to like just buy food and supplies because I hadn't been home in like almost a month. And everything was still fully stocked.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, so it's like there was no.
And what's the scene like on the street? Did you, like when you first got back, like were people around or were they?
Not really. It was really quiet.
Okay.
It was really quiet. And again, I live in Roma, so I live in a really nice neighborhood where people can comfortably shelter in place.
Yeah.
The majority of the population can. And so it's a unique perspective.
But if you can, you should. I mean, I think in the States that's not the case. It's like people aren't taking advantage of their privilege of being able to stay home.
Yeah, it's almost like you're taking away your freedom or something. It's really strange.
Yeah. Or I've seen like on Instagram, I saw this post recently that was like, if your mask is fine, why are you worried about my mask?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, but it affects everyone. Like, if you get sick and pass it to 20 people, like, we will have to shelter in place longer.
Yeah.
Like, and the hospitals will get more clogged. It's like not an us versus them situation. It's like
everyone has to be in this together.
Yeah, like help those who can't necessarily take off or
I think like downtown took longer to shut down, but it finally started doing so like the week I got here, so probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was finally like the wave of like closures was happening downtown because that's the economic activity of the entire country is downtown, and so it's like super dense. But yeah, like now as far as I know, and I've been in Tepotzlan for 2 weeks, as far as I know and understand, everyone has been like completely shut down.
And like, how have you seen like galleries and like people in your position like kind of handling like the shift in the art world? Like I've seen a lot of like Zoom related activities, but and I've seen that you've been on Zoom calls like every day, all day.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I think everyone is just shifting to like online digital stuff, like digital talks, digital tours, recording, whatever is in the gallery space and putting that online. It's been interesting because like I don't think that Mexico has saturated so much of the digital content as like the States has. That's potentially because the States started. Well, I don't know.
Like a couple weeks earlier.
Maybe, I don't know. Like even before things really started closing in the States, I was getting notifications that things were closing here in terms of galleries. So I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
I think everyone is just sort of on pause. Everyone's just sort of on pause, and I think like the bigger galleries that can easily shift into the online content are doing that, but not everyone necessarily needs to either.
And are there projects besides the one in South by Southwest that you were going to be working on right now that you had to?
So many. So South by Southwest got canceled, so that project did not come to fruition. What else? I was supposed to go to a residency on the border with Estonia and Russia.
Oh, right.
And I was going to be there all of May and half of June, and that didn't happen. I was supposed to curate a show in Austin with an artist named Virginia Colwell, and that has been postponed potentially to 2020. 2021.
Yes.
What else? And I was.
And as a like independent, not to interrupt you, but like as an independent curator, like what is your job? Like, one of the I was looking at your website, and I really like that you said, you know, here's my experience, but it's not about my resume, and it's about the people that you serve and your role. And so I wanted to kind of hear from your perspective, like, what is it that you do for people and with people?
I tend to look at curating in terms of communication. And so, like, looking at the gallery space or whatever space I'm in as sort of a conduit for communication. And so I'm really interested in, like, can my grandmother come here and feel comfortable and, like, get something out of this? Like, I don't curate for the art worlds. And I'm not really interested in curating for the art worlds. Like, it's just not, I mean, the art world's great, and I love the art world, and it's fantastic, and it's been very good to me. But I'm really interested in the challenge of curating outside the art world. Like, we all speak the same language in so many ways. And so what does it look like when you bring someone in that doesn't necessarily speak the same language? Like
the art jargon.
And so so I think about my job as, like, communicating something with an artist in a space. And what that is changes every single time I'm invited to do something. And so, like, a lot of the stuff I also do is very, very educational based. And, like, one of the things I was working on is a study abroad program that I've been developing with UT Austin, the University of Texas at Austin, which is my alma mater. We've been working for 3 years to put this thing together, and it was finally coming to fruition in the fall, and the students were arriving in August.
Whoa.
And they were going to be here from August to December.
And this is kind of like an artist residency in Austin that...
It's a study abroad program. Yeah, so it's like the College of Fine Arts. Like, the students in the College of Fine Arts through the University of Texas at Austin. We're coming here to do a study abroad program with me and with people on the ground in Mexico City. So it's like
huge.
We were hiring artists on the ground in Mexico, which meant that, you know, people got to earn US dollars.
Wow.
Like, it was like really spreading the wealth as much as we could, spreading those US dollars as much as we could, which was fantastic. But that got canceled. And so it's like
Indefinitely. Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's too bad.
Which that was probably the biggest blow, I think, because we'd spent so much time working on it.
Yeah, that's really hard.
Yeah.
It's weird, like, you know, when you think about planning things, sometimes you're like, oh, well, I don't know if I'll be able to pull that off. And then other times you're just like, yeah, like, we got a plan. I'm organized. Like, for me, I had, like, this next, like, 9 months planned out as of January. I'm like, I am on it.
I'm going.
And then the world was like, boom, like, you're done with that.
It's funny because I think I've become used to that just living in Mexico for so long. Like, you can only plan so much in Mexico before Mexico City is literally like, just kidding, I'm knocking you off your feet right now.
Oh, wow.
Like, as soon as you start to feel comfortable in the city, and like, as soon as you start to feel like, I got this, it's like, nope.
What are some other times that, I'm curious, like, what are their examples? I mean, I guess the earthquake.
The earthquake. I mean, you're like constantly sort of, it's a city on the verge, as people say. So there's always, like, if it's not an earthquake, then it's like a flood, or it's the volcano. It's like all these, like, crazy things, you know, like, so, or it's, you know, such a dense population that you're constantly surrounded by people. And then there's just some days where, you know, things just don't work the way you want them to. And so it's like, okay, I'm going to go back home and I'm going to reset and try again tomorrow.
Totally.
You know, like...
Yeah, like, here for a while we were having no water and no power, like, together. And so you were like, no internet, like, barely any cell service in our neighborhood. So
I had no cell service.
I was just like, all right, I guess I'm going to read and do analog, like, painting and drawing, because I can't do anything else.
Yeah, I mean, like, when I was getting my residency, I had to go to the immigration place, like, almost every day.
Oh, yeah, because you're a permanent resident now, yeah.
I had to go, like, every single day, and it was, like, I would go with a single goal of, like, I'm turning in this document, but then inevitably something would be wrong with the document. So then I'd have to, like, go back and, like, it's like, things like that happen all the time, like, all the time.
Well, and being a curator and, like, navigating institutions, you're dealing, I remember you saying you have to, like, work with the government a lot, and that's, like, a very intense world.
Yeah, it's just, like, you know, it's like, you have to know how to communicate. Like, you have to know the right sort of buzzwords to kind of
like unlock the door to the next
Exactly.
level.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, which is like such a learning process.
I wanted to ask you about like the idea of like coronavirus busyness, because I think we were kind of talking about it a little bit with all the Zoom calls, but like why are we more busy now that there's nothing going on than like I personally have like no time for anything anymore. Like I know you've expressed that and like talk
We were just talking about that before you hit record. Like just before we started doing this, I got like 6 or 7 messages from people.
You actually got a couple while we've been on this call too.
Like
She's really fun.
It's just funny because like I'm not that busy right now, and I'm okay with that. Like I'm okay with my stuff being on pause because
meaning with projects.
Yeah, with projects. Like I'm okay with that because it's just like there's so many more urgent things happening in the world, you know, and like people's health is so much more important than like producing an exhibition to me, especially right now. And I don't think every project needs to end with an exhibition. Like that's not my end all be all goal and game in this like world of art that I'm participating in. But yeah, it's been really weird because it's like there's almost like people have an anxiety to be busy, and that's been really interesting to watch because I'm like, well, does that deadline really exist?
Like fill the space kind of and create structure that doesn't necessarily, it's not real, but
yeah, exactly. Like the need to feel like you're doing something, and I don't really have that. I don't really have that at all. So like I'm totally okay with like taking a 3-hour nap in the middle of the afternoon and reading Harry Potter all day.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm fine with it. I have 0 deadlines right now, and I'm okay with that. And I don't necessarily feel the urgency to like fill space.
Yeah.
And so like for Casa Lu, for example, I was supposed to curate an exhibition for the gallery space in the city, but we can't gather. So there's really no sense of putting urgency onto like finding a project for a space or doing a project for a space. And so I've been very slowly like shifting it into thinking about like what can I do that can live online comfortably or that can live in a digital world comfortably rather than like turning a physical project into a digital thing, if that makes any sense.
No, definitely.
But like pivoting the entire thing so that its conceptual basis is an online platform rather than the other way around.
Yeah. Something that has popped into my mind, so this podcast that I listen to called Congratulations Pine Tree, they do a whole segment on it, but
I think that's title.
Yeah, it's really cute. It's Bay Area's best podcast or whatever, art podcast. But they talk about the environmental impact of storing data on servers. So if you store things on the cloud, you just think like, oh, it's just like, where's it going? It's not real. But it actually takes like a crazy amount of energy and has like a huge carbon footprint to like upload a video and keep it on the cloud.
Oh, whoa.
And you know, it's easy to forget about it and not worry and just be like, well, this is our world now. But you know, at some point I wonder like, we're gonna have to reckon with that and like like you'd think it'd be better than staging an in-person show, but then you start thinking about, okay, well, what am I actually doing by putting all this information up and leaving it there?
We'll see. I don't know, like we'll see what happens.
I mean, that was just a side note. It's not to critique your thoughts, but I was just like, that is something that we should at some point like deal with. And like not have our Google Drive be filled with random crap.
I think that like this is a moment where a lot of those issues are coming out. Like what are the things we really need to deal with? Like, you know, a month after Venice went into lockdown, there's like fucking dolphins in the canals.
Right. And like LA has blue skies and Beijing has no more, you know.
Parts of India you can see
pollution.
The Himalayas.
Right.
You know, like, and it's like what are, like we can see the impact of like human hand and decisions on nature. So like we you can see how it comes back to life so quickly after we are not part
And
of
that
manipulating
our world was not a normal state for nature.
Yeah.
Nature was like, get out of here.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
stop taking up our space.
Exactly. It's really weird. And it was really weird to see how quickly nature could kind of bounce back once that like human manipulation was sort of removed.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, and I think that is something that we're all thinking about right now too. You know, like
Yeah, I hope so. I worry that like it'll just kind of go back to, oh my god, I'm so glad I have my gas guzzling, like coal burning car or whatever, with an enormous gas pipe or, I don't know.
I don't know either. That I don't know. Like that, I'm from Texas, and so obviously cars are really important to Texans, and not to me, but it's like a sense of independence and freedom. You know, if you have a car, you can go anywhere, which I think is.
And it's like this
false.
identity too of like, kind of the way clothes define you. It's like, my car says who I am.
It really is. And so I think in many ways, like, I can only speak for my state on this, but like, it's gonna take a lot of like cultural shifts for people to be able to move past that identity thing where it's like, needing a car or needing that carbon footprint or like expanding that carbon footprint in many ways. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. It's definitely like a turning point.
Yeah.
I think.
So to kind of wrap things up, are there any like books, other than Harry Potter, or like movies or music that's like really appealing to you during this time?
So I just started reading My Brilliant Friend by Ferrante. A friend of mine, Rebecca Marino, has just been like sending me all kinds of book recommendations, and so whatever she sends, I'll read. I just finished.
I think my friend a different person who I interviewed recommended that.
Really?
Actually.
It's so good.
Yeah, and it's in Spanish.
It's actually, I'm reading the English version.
Oh, okay.
It's very good. And what else? I finished Geek Love. I just read for the first time. Little Women.
Oh, I love Little Women. Yeah.
It's so good. I read The Martian, which is also really good.
That was the movie with Matt Damon.
Yeah. Which I have not seen the movie yet.
He like uses his poop to make potatoes in the soil.
Yes, he does.
That's what I remember.
He uses poop to make potatoes. And I'm also reading a book called On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, recommended by my friend Kara, and it's just beautiful. It's just beautiful. It's a hard book to read because it's about PTSD triggers from the Vietnam War specifically. It's just like beautiful sentences. Cool.
Well, that sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I look forward to spending the last 3 days of your residency hanging out. We're going to do karaoke later, so feel free to join. Except for it'll be way too late for you. It'll be over. I'm going to cut that out. Okay, bye.
Bye.